Hyperactivity, trouble paying attention, impulsive behaviors. If these all sound familiar, it may be time to have your child screened for ADHD. But the question is, where do you start? The executive editor at Kidsburgh, Melissa Rayworth, joins us now to talk more about those next steps, including resources in the area. It's good to see you, Melissa.
You too.
All right, so the numbers here, they're pretty staggering. The CDC estimates that 6 million children between the ages of 3 and 17 were diagnosed with ADHD between 2016 and 2019. I mean, 6 million,
Yeah.
wow.
And certainly in the years since, those numbers have grown. Yeah, and for a lot of parents, they're not quite sure if they're seeing behaviors, as you mentioned, that hyperactivity and behavior like that, they're not sure. Is their child suffering from ADHD and needs some support with that? Or are they just dealing with a need to learn some executive function behaviors or just some help with their anxiety?
Yeah, because I can imagine that line can be really thin between determining whether or not you think your child has ADHD or whether they're just, having some trouble with their behavior. How do you tell the difference?
Well, it's complicated. There aren't any blood tests, there aren't any scans that can be done, but there are certainly steps families can take. You can start with your pediatrician and begin with a conversation with them. There are questionnaires that are available. In fact, in the Kidsburgh article we did about this, we linked to one of the most common questionnaires that's used. And it's pretty lengthy, it's several pages, and it's for the parents to fill out. If your child's a little bit older, your child may fill out a version of it. And you can also give it to a trusted teacher and get a sense of what your child's behaviors are like at school in case, it may be that they're able to concentrate and follow instructions a bit better at school than they are for you at home, or vice versa.
Yeah, and you mentioned following instructions. Is that one of the things that you should be looking out for? Is there something, if you're at home and your kid's playing, some signs that maybe there might be a diagnosis of ADHD?
Yeah. Well, it's complicated, of course, because depending on the age level, you may look at whether your child can focus on an activity, can stay with a project, can, as you said, can follow some steps and run through something, and can manage their own feelings and not, avoid what they need to get done, or also stay organized. Can they, is their backpack for school somewhat organized and they actually give you the permission slip when they get home? But again, those are behaviors that there's a lot of kids that they may not follow up on those things, but that doesn't mean that they have ADHD. It is challenging for parents.
That does sound challenging. All right, so you mentioned an evaluation session. What does that look like?
Well, often what happens, families may start with speaking to their pediatrician. Not all pediatricians do the evaluations, but some may refer you to a mental health professional or someone else to do that. But basically, it starts with those questionnaires often. It's also a conversation. It's discussing what kinds of behaviors you're seeing, what might be age appropriate. And again, getting some feedback from the school if your child is school age to see what kind of behaviors are happening there. But it's a lot of conversation, and it is challenging for families because, as I said, it's not like there's a blood test or something you can do that says, okay, this is what's going on.
And I would have to think, just being a new mom, it would be hard for me to come to the conclusion that my kid might have ADHD.
Yes, and if part of what you're seeing does have to do with anxiety rather than ADHD, one of the challenging things, we did a story recently about what's called eggshell parenting. If a parent is getting anxious, which often happens if your child is struggling to do what you need them to do, your anxiety may end up sort of feeding theirs, and the whole situation feels a bit heightened, but really there isn't a diagnosable issue there.
Yeah. Now, are there other things, in addition to anxiety, that might complicate a diagnosis?
Yeah, there is the question of also learning disabilities. If your child maybe has not yet been diagnosed with dyslexia, but that's present, or there's another learning issue, that may seem to be presenting as ADHD, but really it's that the child is struggling at school and they're having a hard time staying on task.
Yeah, my biggest question is the reason why. These numbers are really high. Like, why is this happening so much?
Well, so that's another question. Is it becoming more common? Is it is it possible that because so many kids are on screens or have so much stimulation, it's becoming more common? Or is it just something that it's in the conversation, we're aware of it, so it's being diagnosed more often? sometimes because it needs to be caught, but also is it possible that there's a lot of kids getting this diagnosis who don't really need it?
Yeah, and you mentioned something really important. All of the screen time and all of the games and the apps and the social media that kids are paying attention to and kind of tuning out the rest of the world.
Or just getting that additional stimulation so they don't have a lot of downtime, a lot of relaxation time for their brains.
All right, good information. What should a parent do if they think that their child may have ADHD?
Sort of 3 different routes to take, and the experts we spoke with for this article said any one of them is a great place to start. You could start with a teacher and ask what they're seeing and also ask if they can refer you somewhere to get an evaluation. You could start with your family pediatrician if that's someone that you can, who knows your child and you can talk to. Or you could start directly with a mental health professional, and that could be, it could be a psychiatrist or psychologist, but it could also just be a therapist or a social worker, someone trained in mental health enough to either do the evaluation or refer you somewhere for one.
All right, well, thank you so much, Melissa. You've made a lot of things more clear. All right, if you're interested in checking out Melissa's article and other stories on Kidsburgh, we will have a link on our website. We'll be right back.